Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I am your host. And in this episode, we are going to be previewing Week 5 of the 2025 fantasy football season. We're also going to be recapping that insane game between the 49ers and the Rams. Sorry to anyone that had the Rams in their survivor pool. That game was insane. So we're going to go over that, preview the rest of the Week 5 games, and then most importantly, I'm going to hit you with my starts of the week, and that is the best segment in all of fantasy football. So make sure you are subscribed or following wherever you are enjoying the podcast so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy. And if you want video of the pod, head over to the YouTube Fantasy Football Prodigy, and you can see my ugly mug talking some ball. My jaw issue is still persisting. So if I'm moving my jaw kind of weird, I just have some weird thing with my ear and jaw. So, you know, that's just what we're dealing with here. I'm taking some sort of medicine to supposedly make it better, but it's not really working too well. But anyways, let's get right into the Thursday night recap. So the 49ers traveled to the Rams in LA, San Fran at LA. 49ers were without Mac Jones. Obviously no Brandon Ayuk. They were without Ricky Pearsall. George Kittle is still out. They were without who's the other guy they were missing? Another receiver. They're missing everybody. Who's the other receiver for the 49ers? Oh, this is a great start to my NFL podcast here. Juwan Jennings. He's on my dynasty team. I know who that is. So no quarterback, no starting two receivers, no starting tight end. And they had other injuries too. And they were on the road against the Rams, who are a good team. And they won in overtime 26-3. Mac Jones put up 33 of 49 for 342 and 2. As long as Brock Purdy is out at quarterback, he's going to be a viable streaming candidate. You know, you probably want to play him in the right matchup, but you wouldn't think the Rams on the road with no receivers is the right matchup. So Mac Jones is someone that, you know, after he's out of San Fran, he's probably going to get a contract based on how he's playing. So if he's on your dynasty waiver wire, it's probably worth putting at the end of your bench, and someone you can maybe get value from this year if he gets more starts. And then, yeah, Christian McCaffrey was a stud. I guess he was 22 for 57 on the ground, so not very efficient. But he saw 9 targets, turned into 8 for 82 and a touchdown through the air. Still no rushing touchdowns on the season. Brian Robinson Jr., not very involved as a backup, 5 for 12 on the ground. Kendrick Bourne at receiver is the guy who really stepped up in that offense with all those injuries. 10 for 142 on 11 targets. Jake Tonjes, 7 for 41 and a touchdown on 11 targets. I tried to pick him up in my guillotine league where I think my tight end was on bye, and he wasn't there. So I think I'm starting Theo Johnson in that league. So that is, I would have loved to get 7 for 41 and a touchdown in that league. Who was my start? I have Kyle Pitts and someone else that's better that I normally start. They're both on bye this week. Tucker Kraft. And this guillotine app, I don't know if you guys use it, like this new guillotine app. It's like you can't look ahead in the schedule. So like I could have done my own research externally and be like, oh, they have the same bye week, but it's like I like to just do it in the app that I'm looking at my team with. So anyways, it's a whole thing. But Demarcus Robinson, I thought would be more involved. He was 3 for 39, 7 targets. So he's someone that might be interesting in if these injuries persist. But then for the Rams, Stafford was 30 of 47, 389 and 3 touchdowns. Kyren Williams had a huge game, 14 for 65 on the ground, but then he had an 8 for 66 and 2 touchdowns through the air on 10 targets. Devontae Adams was 5 for 88 on 11 targets. He started really slow, but kind of late in that game, he was getting a little more involved. And then Puka Nacua, he also started kind of slow, but he finished great, 10 for 85 and a touchdown on 12 targets. Tutu Atwell had some big plays, 2 for 72. Jordan Whittington, 2 for 33. So this game went to overtime. It was insane. Nobody really expected the 49ers to have a chance, and they're now 4-1, and the Rams are 3-2. So, yeah, hopefully you started some people in that game. Hopefully it was the right people. Blake Corum only had 1 carry for 13 yards. Saw 2 targets and didn't catch either of them. So it really was the Kyren Williams show. But yeah, let's move on to my starts of the week for week 5. So we looked in the past. Now we're going to look ahead, and I'll give you my starts of the week, and then I'm going to hit you with the preview for the rest of the week. So before I forget, bye weeks this week, I mentioned them when I was kind of venting about my guillotine league. Atlanta Falcons, so no Drake London, no Bijan, no Kyle Pitts. Chicago Bears, no Swift, no Roma Dunze, Caleb Williams. Green Bay Packers, no Josh Jacobs, no Jordan Love, no Tucker Kraft. And then so Green Bay Packers and then the Pittsburgh Steelers. So no Jalen Warren, no DK Metcalf. I had him on my bench last week anyways against my Vikings. They just let him run 80 yards free. So really excited for that that early morning wake up to watch the Browns and the Vikings. Speaking of Vikings in London. But anyways, moving on. My starts of the week. So I'm going to go position by position, hit you with the start of the week, and I might even have a little bonus segment for the running backs. So, quarterback start of the week, Justin Fields of the New York Jets at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Fields can be a tricky player to gauge in fantasy, even when he doesn't perform well for real life. His mobility and his big play ability can allow him to be great for fantasy. I think we see a good fantasy performance from Fields this week as he is taking on the Dallas Cowboys, a dream matchup. They have given up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. Running back Breece Hall should also get his in this matchup, but I think both can put up production against the Cowboys, and I like Justin Fields as a mid quarterback 1 in week 5. Moving on to the running back position. Running back start of the week, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. I love David Montgomery in the right matchup on this offense. And this week against the Bengals, the matchup doesn't really get much better. In week 3 against the Ravens, a great matchup for running backs on the season, David Montgomery was the running back 2 overall on the week and scored nearly 30 fantasy points. In week 4 against a brutal Browns run defense, his fantasy production was almost non-existent as he finished as the running back 62 on the week with only 1.2 fantasy points. Now here in week 5, he gets to take on the Bengals, who are giving up the second most fantasy points to running backs on the season. The Lions are also 10.5-point favorites, meaning there's a good chance we get a game script that allows Montgomery to run the ball with a lead into the fourth quarter. With an implied point total of about 30 for the Lions, and with his usage on the goal line, there is a very good chance that we see David Montgomery score in this game. The Lions should wipe the floor with the Bengals, and I think Montgomery is going to get in on the action with some solid fantasy production. I like David Montgomery as a mid running back 2 in week 5. And then I'm going to hit you with a little bit of a bonus segment here at the running back position. So, we'll dive into this as we preview the upcoming games, but this is kind of a start of the week, kind of just me wanting to highlight some guys. So I want to highlight some backup running backs who are going to get a chance to shine here in week 5 of the 2025 fantasy football season. So backup running backs start of the weeks, Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers versus the Miami Dolphins. Michael Carter and Emari Demercado of the Arizona Cardinals versus the Tennessee Titans. And then Rachaad White and Sean Tucker of the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Seattle Seahawks. So we'll start with Chuba Hubbard, or we'll start with Rico Dowdle. With Chuba Hubbard ruled out for the Panthers, Rico Dowdle will be the lead back against the Dolphins, who are giving up the 8th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. Rico has been somewhat involved in this offense alongside Chuba before the injury, and we saw him be productive for fantasy as the main guy for Dallas last season, so I like him to get volume in this spot in a good matchup. Moving over to the Buccaneers, with Bucky Irving ruled out, Rachaad White is going to have a bigger workload. While inefficient, he was still once great for fantasy as the Buccaneers starter, and he particularly shined as a pass catcher. Wide receiver Mike Evans is out yet again for this game. So Rachaad White is likely to receive a healthy share of the targets in this game. Sean Tucker is also someone to monitor in this backfield who may be involved in this game, but I would prefer to start Rachaad White. And then finally, moving over to the Arizona Cardinals, With James Conner out for the season and now Trey Benson on injured reserve after being the starter for 1 week, which was not even as good as we had hoped, Michael Carter and Emari Demercado will be the 1-2 punch in the backfield against the Titans. I project Demercado to be involved in the passing game and be the 2-minute drill back, with Michael Carter being the true starter and getting more early down work on the ground. The Titans are giving up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs on the season, so the matchup is good for whichever running back gets the most work. We actually saw Michael Carter get 13 and 17 carries in the final 2 weeks of the 2024 season for the Cardinals when he was called upon. So if the Cardinals can maintain a good running game script here as 7.5-point favorites, I think Carter is a solid bet to hit the teens in carries. All in all, none of these guys are true must starts, but if you're dealing with injuries or bye weeks, which you probably are, you can spot start any of these guys as flex options if you need production this week. Rachaad White is my favorite of the bunch, and he slots in as a low running back too because of his passing game involvement, and I don't see Sean Tucker taking away enough touches to really worry me in terms of volume for White. Rico Dowdle is probably my second favorite of this group. He has the potential to see a ton of volume like Rachaad White does, but the Panthers offense isn't quite as reliable as the Bucs offense is. Next, I think Michael Carter and then Emari Demercado are both solid plays, and I think I lean Carter given the projected game script where the Cardinals should be leading and being able to run, but it wouldn't surprise me to see both of these guys vulture each other's production a little bit. And then finally, to me, Sean Tucker is more of just a deep league play or someone to stash and see what the workload looks like this week. If he's heavily involved and Bucky misses more than just this week, Tucker might be someone worth inserting into lineups the following week. I'm most likely being forced to start Sean Tucker in a league where I've just been decimated by injuries and bye weeks. So I'm hoping for the best for him, but that's kind of how it slots in. It's going to be unpredictable. All of these guys have great opportunities to produce in week 5, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I just wanted to highlight these guys to let you know that if they are out there on your waivers, these are some players that might be able to give you some production in a pinch in week 5. And then moving on to the wide receiver position, back to more of a true start of the week. Wide receiver start of the week, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets at home against the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are giving up by far the most fantasy points to wide receivers in the league, and the Jets have literally nobody else to throw the ball to other than the uber talented Garrett Wilson. This game has a 47.5-point over-under, and if both... I just stuttered so bad. Whoa. That was so weird. I'm just so excited about watching this New York Jets. Is it bad I have 2 New York Jets as my starts of the week? Is that risky? Guys, I'm drinking an energy drink right now. It's an Alani. It's like a pumpkin flavor. I'm not a big pumpkin guy, but I want the caffeine. Also, by the way, it is 2:30 a.m. on Saturday, October 4th. I probably should have said that at the top, but just so you know the date. So by the time this gets dropped, it'll be even later on. Well, I guess, yeah, later in the day on Saturday. But anyways, I'm gonna start over. Wide receiver start of the week, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets at home versus the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are giving up by far the most fantasy points to wide receivers in the league, and the Jets have literally nobody else to throw the ball to other than the uber talented Garrett Wilson. This game has a 47.5-point over-under, and if both offenses can put in work, we could see a shootout, which we would love for Wilson's upside. Even without CeeDee Lamb, Dallas has the weapons on offense with Dak, Javonte, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson to put the pressure on the Jets and force them to need to score. Garrett Wilson is a must start in this matchup, and I liked him as a locked-in wide receiver in week 5. Dude, our AC is broken right now, and it is hot in here, and I feel like I'm hallucinating. Also, if you're wondering why I just started from the top there, I'm going to put this in a TikTok of some sort, so I kind of just wanted it all together. If you're wondering why I started from the very beginning, it's just easier that way. So a little behind the scenes movie magic. Moving on to the tight end position, last start of the week. Tight end start of the week, Darren Waller of the Miami Dolphins on the road against the Carolina Panthers. After coming out of retirement, Darren Waller made his 2025 debut last week against the Jets and came down with 2 red zone touchdowns. Now, he is not going to score multiple touchdowns every week, but I love that the team looked his way in that area in the red zone right out of the gate. Darren Waller has been ramping up since the offseason, and he played just 16 snaps in his first game action, but that number is expected to increase as the season goes along. His snaps and involvement are going to have to increase this week, actually, as the Dolphins just lost their number 1 wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, for the season in that game. There is still a good chance that the 33-year-old with an extensive injury history sees the field less than we want for immediate fantasy football greediness, but in a good matchup against the Panthers defense, after what we saw out of him in the red zone last week, Waller is in starting consideration this week. We might be looking at a touchdown or disappointment type of prediction. We might be looking at a touchdown or disappointment type of projection, but if you are desperate and looking for a streaming option off of waivers, I like Darren Waller as a high tight end 2 in week 5. My God, I just had an easy Mac and it's coming up. What the heck? Wow, I can't even make it through one of these players without my body attacking me. Anyways, moving on to the rest of the week 5 preview. So we're going to fly through these here, just kind of quick hitting. Minnesota Vikings at the Cleveland Browns. This game is overseas. It's a disgusting game. I don't know how else to say it. It's a gross game. Carson Wentz and Dylan Gabriel. No JJ McCarthy for the Vikings again. Joe Flacco got benched. This game is a 36.5 point over under. It's very low. The Vikings are 3.5 point favorites. The Vikings are going to be without 3 offensive linemen. So I don't know how we're going to block Myles Garrett and this defensive line. The Browns defense is very good. Even though it's the Browns, they're a good defense. So Quinshawn Judkins, running back for the Browns, he should be in your lineups. Even though it is projected to be a gross game, he's a solid running back too. Jordan Mason, running back on the other side of the ball for the Vikings, you can start him. I would temper expectations here. The Browns have been shutting down running backs so far on the season, so they've given up the second fewest points to running backs, basically the fewest in the league, right next to the Chargers. So, he's not a must start. He's more of like a mid running back 2 to me. So, if you have Rachaad White, that might be someone you put in over Jordan Mason. I'm thinking about starting Rico Dowdle over Jordan Mason. So, Jordan Mason is still a safe play. I'm not saying he's a must bench, but it could be more gross than you want. In a gross game against the Steelers last week, how did he finish? Let's see. I have him on one of my teams. I'm going to pull him up. Yeah, like right now I have Michael Carter and Rico Dowdle in a lineup. I have Jordan Mason on the bench. I don't know if I should play. I feel like Mason is a safer bet, but it could really go bad fast. Yeah, last week he was 16 for 57, 3 for 15 through the air. So I don't know. It's going to be gross. But anyways, you're starting Justin Jefferson, receiver for the Vikings, obviously, even in a gross matchup with the bad quarterback play. Jordan Addison at wide receiver. He made his debut after his suspension last week. You can start him as like a wide receiver 3. He always has big play touchdown upside, but not a must start. And then TJ Hawkinson for the Vikings at tight end. He is more of a tight end 2 at this point. Like, he's someone that you don't have to play. If you want to play Darren Waller over him, my start of the week, that might not be a bad call. Hawkinson just really hasn't been getting it done. And with the low over-under, backup quarterback, tough defense, I don't blame you for going away from him. And then for the Browns, I'm not starting Jerry Jeudy. I'm not starting Njoku. I'm not starting Fannin. Tillman is going to be out for this game, so maybe we see some consolidation of targets here. But we also have a new quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, making his first start. So Jeudy to me is nothing more than like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at best. But don't drop him. He's worth holding on to. If Gabriel or Shadur Sanders turns out to be a decent guy at the quarterback position, then maybe they get value. But I really thought Joe Flacco was going to be good for these pass catchers, but it just hasn't really worked out. Moving on, we got the Las Vegas Raiders on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. 47.5 point over under. Colts are 7 point favorites at home. I probably should have said the records too. Vikes are 2-2, Browns are 1-3, Raiders are 1-3, Colts are 3-1. So Colts are projected to win here. It's a great game for Jonathan Taylor. You start him every week at running back. Also for the Colts, Michael Pittman is he's been solid. You can start him. Alec Pierce is going to be out, so Adonai Mitchell is going to have a chance to have a role again. We saw him drop the ball in the 1 last week, so hopefully he doesn't do that again. It's kind of a Colts thing. I'm not looking to start Josh Downs. You can start Daniel Jones at quarterback for the Colts. He's a very solid play this week. He's been a solid surprise for fantasy. I do think the Colts are going to win this game. I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to have to really exert himself to have a huge upside game, but if the Raiders can keep up, maybe he does. He's still in that low quarterback 1 range for me. Like him and Jared Goff is an interesting conversation where Daniel Jones is probably safer and does have upside himself with his mobility, but Jared Goff against the Bengals, are they gonna run in a bunch of touchdowns, or are they gonna throw a bunch of touchdowns? Like I could see Goff having 4 or 5 touchdowns through the air, or having 1 or 0 if they just run them all in. So we'll get to that game later, but on the Raiders side of the ball here, also Tyler Warren at tight end for the Colts, must start. Brock Bowers at tight end for the Raiders, must start. Maybe temper expectations still, just because he is dealing with that knee injury. He's actually planning on playing. So yeah, that's not what you like to hear. You would like to just hear nothing. Yeah, and it's pretty obvious, and there's even been reports now that this injury is limiting him a little bit, and he's not his usual self. So if you can buy low on him, especially in Dynasty, like if someone really thinks like Brock Bowers is like bad all of a sudden, like obviously buy low. But it might be, it might be a while before he's fully healthy, and they might have to honestly rest him. So we'll see, but monitor the news with that. You start Genty for the Raiders. He had his breakout game against the Bears recently. He's still, a low running back 1 for me. The Raiders are going to be, I thought they were going to be without their tackle. I thought they were missing some offensive linemen, but this injury report I'm looking at doesn't say that. I could have swore they were missing some linemen. Let's see. Yeah, what? Okay, maybe not. I don't know where I heard that information from. I heard it from some fantasy podcast I was listening to. So, anyways, I guess not. So start Genty. He's good. He's going to be up and down with his offense. Geno Smith hasn't looked great at quarterback for the Raiders, but Jacoby Myers at receiver is someone you can throw out there. He's kind of known as this, consistent PPR guy. He's been a little disappointing lately, but he's still in that wide receiver 2 range. He saw 7 targets last week, only turned into 4 for 30. The week before that, 3 for 63 on 4 targets. So, before that, weeks 1 and 2, he had 10 and 12 targets respectively. So you can still put him out there, but not a must start. I think that about covers that game. I'm not looking to start Trey Tucker, but DFS, deep leagues, if you needed some juice in your lineup, Trey Tucker is a big play guy in that, wide receiver 3-4 range. And yeah, I think that's about it for that game. Moving on, the New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. Now, this is a game that it's going to be gross, but it has a higher over-under than my Vikings do. So against the Browns, 42.5. Saints are 1.5 point home favorites. The rookie Jackson Dart got his first start last week against the Chargers and got the win. So that was surprising. He showed his mobility there. Still not someone I'm looking to put in lineups outside of like desperation, like a 2 quarterback league. But he runs over his stats. Maybe he's someone I should be considering more. I kind of wonder if I'm overlooking him. He was 13 of 20 through the air for 111 and 1. And then he added 10 for 54 and a touchdown. You know what? Maybe Dart is someone you probably should be considering more than I just let on. Saints are also giving up the 6th most points to quarterbacks on the season. Now they did just lose Malik Neighbors for the season, which obviously doesn't bode well for him having weapons to throw to. So Jackson Dart is a streamer, but with bye weeks and stuff, I guess Dart is in that consideration. I'd probably still play Bo Nix over him, Baker Mayfield, Dak, Goff. Once you get past those guys, like I'd play Dart over like him and Sam Darnold is interesting. Darnold's been pretty solid. I played him over Geno, over Stroud, even though it's a good matchup with Baltimore. Yeah, it's kind of where that line is. Spencer Rattler, though, not looking to start him for the Saints at quarterback. Cam Scadaboo, dude, I wish I had him in Dynasty, bro. He is a dog. He's so fun to watch. He was almost my start of the week at running back. I ended up going with the Lions and David Montgomery just because I think they're a safer bet to put up a lot of points as an offense. Whereas this game, I could see how this game turns ugly, especially, you know, the Giants don't have Neighbors. I could see this offense stall. You know, there's been a game of film on Jackson Dart now on the road in a dome in New Orleans. So I still love Cam Scadaboo. He's a solid running back too this week. With Tyrone Tracy out with injury. You know, last week he was a starter. 25 carries, turned into 79 yards, only 2 for 11 on 2 targets through the air, but he's really good. The Chargers have a great run defense. You heard me say earlier, Chargers are giving up the fewest points to running backs on the season, and you know he still saw a ton of volume and was pretty solid for fantasy. So against the Saints, who are giving up the 9th most points to running backs, I do love that. And like I said, he was almost my start of the week. On the other side, Alvin Kamara at running back is a good start. He's been kind of not the Alvin Kamara that we want, the Alvin Kamara of old. He hasn't been as involved as a pass catcher as we wanted, but the Giants are giving up the 5th most points to running backs on the season, and Kamara should see plenty of volume. I do have worries long term, just because, you know, Kendry Miller is there. This team isn't really going anywhere, obviously, and even though Kamara is 30, he is tied to the Saints for at least a couple years, I'm pretty sure. So he's probably going to be around. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Saints start to kind of like, you know, make it more of a split and conserve Kamara's health, especially at 30 years old. But this week, I think he'll be good. And if he has a good game, he's someone I'd be probably looking to get out of. He's been really kind of mid, and if you can get out of him in a good matchup where his involvement might lower throughout the year, if you can get good value on that, I do it. But for this week, he's a, you know, solid running back too. And then a receiver, it's a little gross. So for the Saints, you have Chris Olave. You can put him out there. I'm not starting Rashid Shaheed, but Olave he's getting targeted, bro. He's not doing much with the targets, but he's in that, like, you know, low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 range just based on volume. Like, he's being targeted a lot. Like, I think like last week I was looking at targets and he was like the most targeted player in the league other than like Puka or something. It was crazy. You know, Noah Neighbors for the Giants. So Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton enter the kind of spot start streaming conversation. I don't want to put them in my lineup, but you know, they're in that wide receiver 3-4 range. And then at tight end, Theo Johnson, like I said, I'm starting him in a guillotine league because I have to, but you know, I think he's an intriguing young prospect, but you can probably do better outside of guillotine league scenarios. And then Jawan Johnson, he's been questionable like all week. I haven't heard where is his report. Here we go. He's questionable, and he's been kind of, you know, iffy the last couple of weeks for fantasy. So if he's kind of banged up, he's still someone you can play, but kind of drop, you know, like with George Kittle injured, I picked up Jawan Johnson and I picked up Hunter Henry. You know, I'm kind of going back and forth. I played Hunter Henry against the Panthers last week when he got in the end zone. I actually picked him up after he had that big game the week before. I'd probably lean Hunter Henry right now just because of health. And that game could be a little more explosive. Jawan Johnson is very intriguing. He was being used a lot in the slot. The last couple of weeks, though, just been kind of, you know, the week before, 8 targets, 6 for 51. You like that. And then last week, He still played 90% of the snaps both of those weeks, last week and the week before, but last week was only 3 for 28 on 3 targets. So we've seen his targets come down from 11 to 9 to 8 to 3, and he's kind of banged up. So not a must bench if you don't have anyone else good to play. I think he's worth. Like, I'd still start him over Hawkinson. I'd still start him over the Browns guys. Probably over Kincaid, but that's close. Kelsey, I'd probably lean Kelsey, but I don't know. That's also pretty nasty. Tight end is always just nasty, bro. Hopefully you have Tyler Warren, Trey McBride, or Jake Ferguson, bro. Oh, I wish I would have traded for Jake Ferguson, bro. He is looking like a beast for just hyper targeted. But moving on, this game is exciting to me. Dallas Cowboys on the road against the New York Jets. Let's see, 47.5 point over under. 1.5 point favorites, Cowboys on the road. So, also I forgot to mention Taysom Hill is questionable, tight end. So we'll see. I don't know. All the tight ends, Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, and Jawan Johnson for the Saints are all listed as questionable. So, anyways, moving on. Cowboys Jets. No CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys. I forgot to say their records again. The Giants are 1-3. The Saints are 0-4. The Cowboys are 1-2-1. The Jets are 0-4. Sorry. Cowboys are without CeeDee Lamb. Last week, they went into Lambeau. You know, the Packers were coming off an insane loss to the Browns where they just kind of blew it. And, you know, we thought, you know, Packers are going to bounce back. Cowboys are coming in there with a bad defense. No CeeDee Lamb. They're going to get just mollywopped, and the Cowboys won. Or sorry, they didn't win. They tied, which is a win in that scenario for the Cowboys. But yeah, no CeeDee Lamb again. The Cowboys offense still looked good without him. Obviously, you're not a better offense without CeeDee Lamb, but George Pickens really stepped up as the true wide receiver one there. And Dak has looked great for fantasy. He was my guy at quarterback coming into the season. And, you know, even though the schedule hasn't been great and he's missing CeeDee Lamb, he's still been pretty solid for fantasy. I made him a start of the week against the Bears and he did bad, but you know what? That's what happens. So on the Cowboys side of the ball, looking like Tyler Guyton left tackle, Tyler Booker right guard are out. I don't really care. I am still, I'm starting Dak in this game with confidence. He's a low quarterback one. Javonte Williams at running back for the Cowboys. You're starting him, so you know the Cowboys defense has been bad, but the Jets defense has also been pretty bad. The Jets are giving up the 12th most points to quarterbacks. They're middle of the pack against running backs. And then at wide receiver, they're also kind of middle of the pack. But you're starting Dak, you're starting Javonte. George Pickens at wide receiver for the Cowboys is always someone you can play, but without CeeDee Lamb there, he becomes sort of a must start wide receiver one. I know, you know, Sauce Gardner is there at cornerback, and that's going to be, you know, that's tough, but offenses, they find ways to move players around, get them involved. And last week with no CeeDee, he saw 11 targets turn into 8 for 134 and 2 touchdowns. You can't put him on your bench in this matchup on this offense as the clear number one. So you start Pickens. Javonte has been really solid at running back, and I think you can go right back to him. I wish I drafted him more, bro. Yeah, he's like a running back one this week, honestly. He was 20 for 85 and a touchdown, and then 3 for 15 through the air last week. Like he's been so good. He's been so good. I'm very happy for him that he, you know, has bounced back from those injuries in Denver and is actually putting up productive numbers. And then maybe the most exciting player in the league, Jake Ferguson, tight end. Like his targets are insane. 6, 12, 14, and 7. Just crazy. You know, 7 targets was low for him. And even that, he caught all of them, turned it into 40 and a touchdown last week. So against the Jets, like, decent over-under. You play Ferguson. He's a top 5 guy right now. I'd play him over Laporta, Henry, Juwan. You know, if you have Bowers, you still probably have to play Bowers over Ferguson. But, hey, man, I'd get it. I would get it with Bowers kind of banged up right now. And maybe even a double flex situation right there. And then for the Jets, I already talked about it. Justin Fields is a phenomenal play. The Cowboys are giving up the most points to quarterbacks, like I mentioned. So with his mobility, he's a great start. Breece Hall at running back. Cowboys are giving up the 7th most points to running backs, and the backup running back for the Jets, what's his name? Braylon Allen is on injured reserve, so his workload is going to be even more secure as the lead back there. That kind of moves Isaiah Davis up the totem pole at running back as the backup there for the Jets. I'm excited to see how he's involved. He's on my dynasty team, so I'm hoping he does something. And I'm forced to play Isaiah. Bro, can we pause the segment for a second? So in my dynasty league, I traded away James Cook for a first-round pick and James Conner before the season. That first-round pick turned into Caleb Johnson, the worst pick in the whole draft. And then James Conner goes down for the season. I was thinking, touchdown regression. They're not giving him a contract. I trade him away. Oh, James Cook gets a big contract. He scores in every game. He's the best running back in the league. I believe he's the running back 1 right now. And I traded him to this team who they're just like not cursed. They're blessed. Everyone else is cursed because anytime he does anything, it just works out in his favor. So I am starting Hurts, JT, CMC, and Cortland Sutton. After that, Emari Demercado, Isaiah Davis, Malik Washington, Deontay Thornton, Darren Waller. You might think, oh, your team is just bad. Bro, I won the championship last year. I have no draft picks because I invested into some veterans, and a lot of them are still on my team. Like James Conner, I traded for George Kittle in the offseason. He's on injured reserve. James Conner, injured reserve, out for the year. I got Alec Pierce in a trade, out. Jawan Jennings, he was out for that game. Mike Evans, out. Calvin Austin, bye. Drake London, bye. Tyreek Hill, out for the year. Trey Benson, oh, you lost James Conner? Well, that's fine. You have Trey Benson. Oh, he played 1 game. He's on injured reserve. It's just unbelievable. And then I picked up Demercado, but someone else picked up Michael Carter. So it's desperate out there. So that's just to say, like, I will be watching Isaiah Davis probably closer than anyone else in the world. Other than that, Garrett Wilson is a phenomenal must-start receiver. You play him every week, but he's a top-end wide receiver 1 against the Cowboys right now, who are giving up the most points to receivers. According to Fantasy Pros, they're giving up 42 points per game to receivers. The next closest is the Rams at 34.3. I don't know if it says weeks 1 to 4, so I don't think that's factoring the Thursday night game, but Mason Taylor is a streaming option for the Jets at tight end. Not someone I'd really want to put in yet, but DFS, bench stash. Obviously in Dynasty, he should be rostered. He's on my Dynasty team. And like maybe like a really deep league, you could throw him in there, but or maybe like a guillotine league. Moving on though, we got the I said the records right, yeah. Moving on, we got the Denver Broncos going to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Broncos are 2-2. The Eagles are 4-0. They're taking on Denver at home. What's the over under here? 43.5. Eagles are 4.5 point favorites. So Jalen Hurts, quarterback. You start him each and every week. Bo Nix at quarterback for the Broncos. It's a little more of a question mark. I think you can start him. The Eagles have a good defense, but Bo Nix runs, and this offense is pretty solid. So, I have to decide between him and Baker Mayfield. I have Hurts and Nix in a 2-quarterback league, and I also have Baker. So I think I'm going to start Baker, but Bo Nix it's close, but I'd probably lean Baker. But yeah, Bo Nix is really very, very close behind Baker Mayfield. So he's kind of in that very high quarterback 2 range. Wouldn't surprise me if he finished as a quarterback 1. Saquon Barkley, you start him, obviously, at running back. Both these defenses are pretty solid. So it's there's a lot of guys in this game where it's like you start them no matter what for the most part, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some disappointments here. J.K. Dobbins, running back for the Broncos, you're starting him. He's looked really good, and Harvey was involved last week, but I don't think Dobbins is going to go away. Like, he's going to be like a running back 2 pretty much every week, and in the right matchup, he might, win you some weeks. So, Cortland Sutton at wide receiver for the Broncos. He's basically he's a wide receiver too. You put him in your lineup every week, and more often than not, you're going to be very happy you started him. That's just kind of what he does, bro. And then for the Eagles at receiver, it's very gross right now. So AJ Brown is still in that wide receiver 2 range. But when the Eagles don't have to throw, like, they don't have to throw. So like AJ Brown has been very disappointing. I think you have to keep him in your lineup. But you know, he's had one game where you've been happy starting him. Every other game, this is his stat line: 1 for 8, 5 for 27, 6 for 109, 2 for 7. The 6 for 109 also had a touchdown. So he had that one big week 3. Every other game has been just abysmal, terrible. Less than 30 yards, single digits in 2 of them. Last week he was 2 for 7. He had 9 targets. I just feel like unless you have a, like, somehow you're in a 10-team league, or like you just have an insanely stacked roster, I think you have to start AJ Brown. Devontae Smith, I'm fine benching. He's more of a wide receiver 3 right now. Like, last week, 2 targets, 2 for 29. You know, he also had a good week 3 when the Eagles were losing and had to come back and throw the ball, but that's usually not how they do it. They usually play defense and run the ball, and they don't have to throw. And, you know, receivers need to be thrown to receive the ball. So, you know, he was 8 for 60 and a touchdown in that big week 3, but yeah, he's not a must start at this point. And honestly, AJ Brown is not a must start. Like, bench him at your own peril if you have a good option. He's still really good at football, and he can, you know, obviously make you regret benching him. But yeah, it's disgusting. At tight end, I'm not looking to start Evan Ingram. I don't want to start Dallas Goedert. I guess technically he's probably in the, you know, low tight end 1, high tight end 2 conversation. He had 2 touchdowns last week on some kind of cool, I don't know if you call them trick plays, but well-designed plays in the red zone. 4 for 37 on 4 targets and had 2 touchdowns. So had a touchdown the week before, 1 for 33 and a touchdown on 2 targets. So kind of touchdown or bust. But, you know, sometimes that's better than your other options. So that's enough time on that game. Oh, also, Troy Franklin at receiver for the Broncos. I'm still interested in him long term. I'm probably not starting him this week. But his snaps went down against the Bengals. 58%, 59, 83, 79, back to 58. But he saw 8 targets, 4 for 55. I think he's still the number 2 there that you want. And what was the score of that game? Did he get like pulled early or anything? They won 28-3. So it's possible that, you know, maybe he could have been out there more. Like, what did Cortland Sutton, what was his snap percentage last week? Where is he? Here he is. Sutton played 85. So he played a lot. So I don't know. Their wide receiver 2 is interesting. I'm probably not starting any of those guys, but Troy Franklin is worth a stash if you have the space. Moving on, Miami Dolphins at the Carolina Panthers. 45.5 point over under. The Dolphins are 1.5 point road favorites. What else was I supposed to say here? Oh, where's their records? Where the heck is their record? The Dolphins and the Panthers, they're clearly the best teams in the league. They got to be 4-0, right? Ooh, 1-3 and 1-3. So Cedric Wilson is a Cedric Wilson out. I didn't even know he still played receiver for the Dolphins. So the big injuries though: Chuba Hubbard out at running back for the Panthers, and then Jatavian Sanders at tight end out for the Panthers. He missed last week, right? Yeah, he didn't play last week either. Which means what's his name? Tommy Tremble. You know, he's someone. He's a guy. What did he do last week? He had 8 targets last week, turned into 5 for 42 and a touchdown. So deep league, DFS, guillotine league, maybe, you know, maybe he's someone to monitor. You know? not looking to start him, but you know, you could. I mean, I was gonna say you could do worse. You really can't. It's kind of bottom of the barrel, but an interesting name. I'm not really like feeling starting Tua or Bryce Young here at quarterback. Devon Achane at running back is a fantastic start for the Dolphins at running back. You're starting him each and every week regardless. But, you know, Tyreek Hill, like I mentioned earlier, at receiver, he's out for the season. Could be a career-ending injury. So that's going to bump up those pass-catching opportunities for Achane at running back. Jalen Waddle at receiver, who is already a guy that, you know, is in consideration to start most weeks. But, you know, now that he's the clear number one, you know, I'm feeling even more confident in him that, you know, he's been up and down this year, but he hasn't had more than 6 targets in the game. 5, 6, 6, 6. Mark of the beast, Jason Moore. Luckily, he had a touchdown in weeks 2 and 3. But you know, it wouldn't surprise me if we see him have his most targets of the season this week. And then Malik Washington he's an intriguing guy, kind of a player that a lot of dynasty players are interested in. I managed to add him to my dynasty team, and like I said, I believe I'm starting him this week. Yeah, he's in my starting lineup. So not at all a must start, but if you have the bench space, put him in your lineup and see what happens, because he's an intriguing athlete who has been buried on the depth chart as the wide receiver 3, but the team has been kind of getting him more involved this season, and now without Tyreek Hill, there's a chance that he becomes like a flex player. And if he is able to make big plays on this offense and run after the catch, like, it's someone who it's like, oh, wow, like I just got like a free, you know, wide receiver 2 or 3 for the rest of the year. So I think he's worth monitoring. I'm not looking to start him right out of the gate unless you're desperate like my dynasty team is, but definitely monitor him. So yeah, it's pretty much Achane, Waddle, pick up and stash Malik Washington, and then you can start Darren Waller at tight end, like I mentioned, as a, you know, he retired and he was once a great player, and I thought he was a rapper, but now he's a football player again. He got 2 touchdowns in his debut. He's in the streaming conversation. He's my start of the week. And then, by the way, guys, when I make someone a start of the week, that doesn't mean start him over like Tyler Warren, right? Like, I don't want to be so obvious with my calls, right? I gotta like kind of dig to the bottom of the barrel a little bit. So, you know, I could see it going poorly for Darren Waller, but I think it's worth a shot if you don't have a good option. And then for the Panthers, no Chuba Hubbard, so Rico Dowdle is a great start this week in this game here. He's going to see all the opportunity in the backfield. They got Trevor Etienne, I believe is his name, the other Etienne in that backfield. But I think Dowdle, he's been a lead back in the past, and he's going to be good. So Dolphins are giving up the 8th most points to running backs on the season, and Dowdle is like a solid running back 2, maybe high running back 3, but you can definitely flex him in there. After that, Ted McMillan at receiver, it's been weird. Like, I feel like he's had a good rookie year, but it just hasn't turned into great things for fantasy. He doesn't have a touchdown yet, but the targets are there, 9, 10, 8, and 8. I think he's been dealing with a calf injury. Says he's good to go. I think you obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but I would keep him in my lineup pretty much no matter what. I'd still play him over like Jalen Waddle. You know, for that, I'd play him over like Jacoby Myers. I'd probably play him over all the Chargers guys, although like Quentin Johnson is always, he's kind of in the same tier where, like, you know, kind of hard to bench Quentin Johnson right now. I'd probably play Johnson over McMillan, but I don't want to have the conversation. Anyways, I can't believe where we're at with Quentin Johnson. That's so crazy. Happy for him. Good for him. But yeah, Ted McMillan, Rico Dowdle, log out for the Panthers, right? I think that's about it. Is Coker playing? Is Jalen Coker going to suit up? No. Is he playing? What the heck? If he's playing, he's worth a stash. Designated to return from IR. He's in line to practice next week. He has his 21-day practice window open. So we'll see what happens with him, but he was an interesting prospect, got hurt, missed the start of the year, and who's kind of a sleeper heading into the year. So don't forget about Jalen Coker. Although the Panthers offense is not kind of as good as we had hoped. Next game, Houston Texans on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. This game has a 40.5 point over under. The line has been going kind of back and forth, but lately the Texans have kind of been favored in most spots. According to the DraftKings sportsbook that I'm looking at, they're 1.5 point favorites right now on the road. That is mostly due to injuries for the Ravens. The Ravens are 1-3 and the Texans are 1-3. The main story here, Lamar Jackson, superstar quarterback for the Ravens, is out with a hamstring injury. They're missing a bunch of players on defense and offense. They're very banged up. They're very, very banged up right now. And it's in Baltimore and the Ravens are a good team, but with all those injuries and no Lamar, I know the Texans aren't a great team, but their defense is pretty solid and they might just shut the Ravens down. Like Cooper Rush is going to get the start for Baltimore. I'm not really looking to start Zay Flowers. You still can start him and you might have to. He's a big play guy where, as far as backups go, Cooper Rush is decent. And Zay Flowers is still in that like wide receiver 2 range. Like a low wide receiver 2 range, but he's got big play upside where he's still worth putting in your lineup unless you have like, maybe like Quentin Johnson. You took him with your last pick. I'd play Quentin Johnson over Zay Flowers. Cortland Sutton in that tough Philly matchup, I'd still play over Flowers. Ted McMillan, I'd play over him. So, Mark Andrews at tight end. He's been getting better. It's kind of similar to last year where we forgot about him. He had 1 in 3 targets in weeks 1 and 2, one for 5 and 1 for 2, week 1 and 2. Week 3, 6 for 91 and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. And then last week in week 4, 7 for 30, no touchdowns, but 8 targets. You like that. So Isaiah Likely did play, wasn't involved at all. I don't know what his snap percentage was. Isaiah Likely, let me look at that quick. Likely played, and he played 47% of the snaps. Doesn't even have a registered target, according to Fantasy Pros. So Andrews is still like a touchdown upside type of guy, but with no Lamar, I don't know how many touchdowns are going to be going around here. They're going to have to rely on Derrick Henry, where we've seen his volume kind of like do weird things in Baltimore. He's a running back where you really want the team playing with a lead. He's icing the game away, getting carries, pounding the defense. But the Ravens are 1-3, so it makes sense. He's been disappointing for fantasy. We might see a unique situation where even if the Ravens aren't necessarily like, have that traditional, we're winning, let's run the ball game script, they might still have to force feed Derrick Henry, where he could see a lot of volume in this game. So, his carry count, 18, 11, 12, and 8. His snap percentage, 57, 61, 49, 40. Like against the Chiefs, they were getting blown out, so he played less than half the snaps. He's not the pass-catching running back. So you still start Derrick Henry. I could see it going a couple different ways where they rely on him and he makes big plays, and he's had the Texans number in the past. And maybe like they just ride him. Pause. I could also see the offense struggling, the Texans defense overwhelming the Ravens, and Derrick Henry just not really seeing the field as much as you want. So I think you still start him though, obviously. I don't think you do start him. You never bench Derrick Henry. On the other side of the ball for the Texans, Woody Marks. I didn't mention him in my kind of injury elevating running back start of the week segment because technically the starter is still there. Nick Chubb for the Texans is still a guy. But Woody Marks is getting more and more involved. So, Nick Chubb still tied his season high in carries, 13 for 47 on the ground, 2 for 15 through the air on 2 targets. But Nick Chubb at this point is basically just a touchdown dependent dart throw. And we saw Woody Marks kind of more or less take over the backfield. The rookie, where he has the juice. He's the guy you want right now, and he could very well be more and more involved as the season goes along. He led the team in carries. He had 17 for 69 and a touchdown. Through the air, he had 5 targets turned into 4 for 50 and a touchdown. Like, he was phenomenal. Hopefully you stashed him. We've been kind of mentioning him. I didn't have roster space anywhere for him, but you think about the Ravens as a tough run defense, just historically. No, they're giving up the most points to running backs in fantasy football. They're the number 1 most given up to running backs. So Woody Marks is a great running back to start this week. And the Texans are favored. And even if they're trailing, I think Woody Marks is the pass catcher. They have Nick Chubb, but he's older. He had a devastating injury, and Chubb is a great player, like a fantasy Hall of Famer, but this is what happens to the older running backs. So Woody Marks is the guy you want there right now, it looks like, and you can put him in your lineups. And in fact, I would recommend it. Like, I'd probably play him over Chase Brown. Like, between him and Tony Pollard, like, that's tough. Like, Woody Marks probably has a little more upside, So, and then at receiver, it's pretty much Nico Collins and log out. Not looking to start Dalton Schultz. He's getting targets, but not really doing much with them. And then, there's other receivers on the Texans, but, Nico is the one you want. I'm not looking to start like Christian Kirk or anything. Maybe, at some point if the offense starts clicking. And we'll see. This is a spot where maybe the offense does click because, like I said, the Ravens are very, very... They're going through it right now. So moving on to the next game, Tennessee Titans at the Arizona Cardinals. The Titans are 0-4. Cardinals are 2-2. In Arizona, I think the Cardinals take care of business here, but the Cardinals wouldn't be surprised if they play down to their competition. 41.5 point over under. Cardinals are 7.5 point favorites. So on the Titans side of things, let's keep it pretty simple. Cam Ward, the rookie quarterback, hasn't looked good. You're not starting him. Tony Pollard at running back. Tajay Spears is still out at running back. So we'll see how the workload is divided once he comes back. But Tony Pollard has seen a ton of volume this season as the only running back there in that backfield. This offense is so bad, he hasn't been able to do much with it. But you can start him as a running back too. I'm starting him in a league or two, most likely this week. Maybe he falls in the end zone and you're happy, but he'll see volume. And then other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Calvin Ridley has been not good for fantasy. Cam Ward hasn't been good at quarterback. Ridley also was dealing with an injury. He's questionable right now. So we'll see if he even plays. He suffered a couple injuries in last week's game where he only played 54% of the snaps. And Alec Ayamaner is kind of the other receiver there that's in consideration. Not looking to start him if Ridley is out. Does that help or hurt Ayamaner? I'm not sure. It's the kind of thing where it's like, do we want Ridley there to draw attention away, or do we want him gone so Ayamaner gets more targets? He's a deep streamer, like a wide receiver 4. And then Chigakonkwo, I was excited for him as a sleeper heading into the season, but until this offense shows more life, he's not on the fantasy radar. For the Cardinals, there's more exciting options. So you got Kyler Murray at quarterback. He's a low quarterback 1 with that mobility. He's always in play. And, that they might not have to really force the issue with this, if the Titans can't score. Kyler might not need to do a lot. So they might get the win and he might not do much for fantasy, but you can still play him as a low quarterback 1. We talked about the running backs, Demercado and Michael Carter. You can flex those guys. Michael Carter, I lean him over Demercado. I'm starting Demercado in my Dynasty League. I have Carter in some other leagues. Demercado should be the pass catcher, but they're pretty similar. The game script kind of leans more towards Michael Carter, and we've seen him get a ton of volume with the Cardinals like last year when he was needed at the end of the year. So both of those guys are flex options. And then Marvin Harrison, you can play him. He's weird. he is a weird player. The Titans are giving up the 7th most points to wide receivers. Last week against Seattle, he's been pretty disappointing. Obviously, he was very hyped up as a rookie. Didn't really have a bad rookie year, but he didn't like blow the doors off, right? And then this year it's been kind of slow. Week 4 against the Seahawks, it was a rough game. He caused a couple interceptions, but then he ended the game strong, saw 10 targets, finished 6 for 66, mug of the beast, and a touchdown. So he's probably in your lineup. Like, I would say in most cases, he's like, he's going to be a wide receiver 2 for your lineup. I don't like when people say like, oh, he's a must start across the board, because it's like, you don't know people's teams. Like, if you took Ted McMillan later or like, Keenan Allen, that's a conversation. Jamison Williams, like Quentin Johnston, that's my example I'm going to keep using. Like, those are guys that you should consider playing over Marv, but I think unless you have a really, really solid option, you should be starting Marv. But I just kind of want to highlight him because he's been very weird for his career. And then Trey McBride at tight end, obviously, you start at tight end. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. So, moving on. Tampa Bay Bucks at the Seattle Seahawks. 44.5 point over under. Seahawks are 3.5 point home favorites. Sorry, what was I looking at here? So let's start with the Bucks side of things. What's their records? That's what I was going to do. I just remembered after I got sidetracked. Hello, Buccaneers, Eagles, not Eagles, Seahawks, wrong bird. 3-1, 3-1. They're both 3-1. So Bucky Irving is out for the Bucks. Mike Evans is out for the Bucks. Jamel Dean is out for the Bucks. They have 3 cornerbacks out: Jamel Dean, Christian Ezian, and Benjamin Morrison. I still like Baker. I think you can still start him. Obviously, you would like him to have his weapons. Even with Bucky there, that helps the offense move. But I think Rachaad White is a good enough backup, and he's a good pass catcher, where Baker Mayfield is still in the quarterback 1 conversation. The Seahawks defense is pretty solid. But the Eagles defense was solid, and Baker was all right against them in that kind of catch up game script last week. And he's been running still. We thought maybe they'll go away, but I'd still start Baker. Like I said, between him and Bo Nix, it's very tough. I'm probably leaning Baker. I'd probably start like Dak over Baker, Jared Goff, just because like if they're able to score, if Jared Goff has more of a chance to throw like 3+ touchdowns than Baker does, but Baker is probably a safer bet to throw like 2, if that makes sense. So Baker's in there. Sam Darnold is a streaming candidate, like mid quarterback 2. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet in that backfield for the Seahawks. You can start Kenneth Walker. Sometimes it can be hard to run on the Bucks. So, wouldn't shock me with this split in the backfield to see like maybe it's a disappointing game for one of these guys, but Kenneth Walker is the one you want as like a running back 2. You hope he hits a big play. And then Charbonnet, I'm not starting him. He's like a running back 3 at this point. His volume 12, 15, injured 12. Only 2 targets on the season, came last week. He did score a touchdown last week. So again, like you can put him in your lineup and he might fall in the end zone. That's the part about fantasy that's like it's kind of hard to predict, but just based on pure volume, I'm not like excited to start Charbonnet. At running back for the Bucks, Rachaad White is a great start this week. Like I said, with no Bucky Irving, he's going to be the lead back. Good pass catcher. Sean Tucker is there as well. I don't know what his role is going to be. I'm not starting Sean Tucker outside of one league where I just have to. I don't know. I'm not really into him. Like, you can put him in a DFS lineup if you're desperate. Like last year, he had a game week 6 where he was 14 for 136 and a touchdown, 3 for 56 and a touchdown through the air. That was week 6. Why did that happen? Did Rachaad White, is he also out? Or did Rachaad White play? Rachaad White was out that game. So Bucky Irving and Rachaad White must have been out that game. Interesting. I'm not able to find Bucky Irving on this list. Anyways, yeah, I'm not really looking to start Sean Tucker. At receiver, JSN for the Seahawks is a lineup lock. He's been phenomenal. There were some worries about him for fantasy where, maybe he couldn't live up to his ADP, but he has been fantastic. I'm not looking to start Cooper Kupp. He's hit the waiver wire in a league or two of mine, and he did get picked up, but if it continues where he's not super involved, we might see him kind of be forgotten. And Bucky Irving did play week 6 last week, and Sean Tucker was still that involved. I don't know if he left early or what's going on with that, but intriguing. Huh. I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the comments can let me know. I don't want to look into it while I'm talking, but Cooper Kupp is not in starting consideration, which is sad because he was once, one of the best receivers in the league, but he's been over, his yardage totals are 15, 90, 31, and 26. So he had that one good game, but yeah, he's 32 now. It's looking like he's past his prime. Emeka Egbuka on the Bucs side is he's a must start. I mean, call it what it is. Seahawks have a good pass defense, but with no Mike Evans especially, like Egbuka, the rookie, has been phenomenal. He's getting in the end zone. Last week he saw 10 targets. He only caught 4 of them, but it went for 101 and 1. Like, you can't not start him at this point. And then Chris Godwin, probably not putting him in the lineup yet. If you're dealing with injuries or bye weeks, like I had Godwin on my dynasty team and I traded him away for some players I got back and yada, yada, yada. I would love to have Chris Godwin. In his first game back, made his debut last week against the Eagles, saw 10 targets. He only caught 3 of them for 26, but for 26 yards, but he played 81% of the snaps. And I think he's a solid wide receiver 3, maybe, probably in that range. I'd play him over Jerry Jeudy. Him probably play him over like Keon Coleman. Him and like Stephon Diggs is probably like a good conversation. But not a must start. Sterling Shepard is there in like super deep leagues, but not really wanting to do that. What was his target totals? He was 2 for 14 last week on 4 targets. So Mike Evans was injured, but now Chris Godwin is back. So Sterling Shepard didn't really get his opportunity to like really, have a bigger role. We'll move on to the Detroit Lions at the Cincinnati Bengals here. So the Lions are 3-1. The Bengals are 2-2. That actually surprises me. I thought they'd be worse. 49.5 point over under. The Lions are 10.5 point road favorites. So on the Lions side of the ball, Jared Goff is this is a good play for him. He's always a little unpredictable. You never know if the touchdowns are going to come, through the air, on the ground, but there is a risk where the Bengals, don't score enough where Jared Goff doesn't need to do a lot, and Goff has these performances where he's just not needed, and the team just kind of runs the ball. But Jared Goff also has that big upside, right? Where he can win you a week. So, if you played him over like Dak or Baker or Jackson Dart or Bo Nix or Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, I wouldn't blame you. I'm not saying you have to play him over those guys, but like if you're an underdog, I think Jared Goff could have a big week. He's in that low quarterback 1 range. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are both great starts. Jahmyr Gibbs is, a locked in running back 1. David Montgomery, like I talked about, he's more of a running back 2, but I think he's a very good bet to get in the end zone this week. And even if he doesn't, I think he's going to see a ton of volume and just be solid. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, holy cow, he has been really good. I mean, he's always really good, but he has been like really, really good. So let's not, the Bengals are giving up the 9th most points to receivers, the 2nd most points to running backs, and the 8th most points to quarterbacks. Also the 9th most points to tight ends. So, you can start, you can start Jared Goff. Jahmyr Gibbs is an auto start. You're 99% starting David Montgomery. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must start receiver. Like, and then Jameson Williams, I think you can actually start him. I'm actually excited to start him in a league. Just because like it hasn't been great for fantasy yet. He had that good week 2 against the Bears. Granted, it was only 2 catches, went for 108 and 1. But last week, in a tough matchup against the Browns, he saw 8 targets, turned into 2 for 40. He had some opportunities to haul in some like long touchdown passes that just didn't connect. But against the Bengals, I think we could very well see him hit like a big play here. So do not like look at his box score and think like, oh, I can't start Jameson Williams. Like I would be very happy to start Jameson Williams. Like start him over like Wandale. And, you know, obviously, you know, Jameson Williams does have some downside, like, but he has so much upside that I usually opt for the guy that has the most upside. So I would start him over like Addison, Higgins, Diggs, Devontae Smith, Wandale, Godwin, Judy, Trey Tucker, Keon Coleman, the Titans guys, Troy Franklin. I'd start him over Olave. Even, you know, if you really know that you just need like safe production, Olave might be better. But him and Ladd McConkey, it's kind of the same thing where Ladd McConkey hasn't even given you safe production. That's tough. You know, once you get to like, yeah, like Ladd, Brian Thomas, Marv, that's where it's tough. I'd probably start him over Jacoby Myers. Just because, you know, Jacoby Myers is kind of a safe floor guy, but his floor has kind of been not really there. So I'd probably take the upside swing on Jameson, especially if I'm an underdog. And then Sam Laporta at tight end. He's been really disappointing, but in a game where, you know, they're projected to score like 30 points, you can put him out there. He hasn't really had a good game for fantasy yet. Week 1, he was 6 for 79, I guess, which is good. But other than that, he's been under 40 yards, no touchdowns. He could get his first touchdown of the year here. So I wouldn't auto bench him by any means. You know, he's still in the tight end 1 conversation, but he's going to need to catch a touchdown. And then for the Bengals, it's gross, you know, with no Joe Burrow. Obviously, Jake Browning is the quarterback. Shamar Stewart is out for the Bengals defense, which is not what they need. Chase Brown has been a huge disappointment, very inefficient. This offense can't, you know, there's no threat of the passing game, so he's just getting shut down. You can start him as a volume play. He's still the lead back, but like he's more of a running back 2 at this point. You know, it's sad. He was a my guy. He was a my guy, and that was kind of predicated on, you know, Joe Burrow being there. But the Lions have a pretty, you know, solid run defense. You hope he catches some passes, but it's probably not a lot of upside. And then at receiver, I'm really not looking to start T. Higgins. You know, he's in that wide receiver 3 range. And he's an explosive athlete where, you know what, he might catch a bomb. And the Bengals should be trailing, but the Bengals have been trailing, and T. Higgins they can't do anything. They cannot do anything on offense. So if you bench T. Higgins, totally cool with that. Jamar Chase is someone I would still be looking to start, but he's kind of just moving down and down the rankings as the season goes along. And look, they've had some tough matchups. Like Cleveland's defense is good. Jacksonville's defense is pretty good. My Vikings defense is good. The Broncos they just played. Now they play the Lions and they play the Packers. You know, the Steelers I don't know what to make of their defense, then the Jets and then the Bears. So, you know, there might be some matchups down the road where maybe, because we've seen Jake Browning look good as like the fill-in quarterback, but this year it just hasn't worked. There's no O-line to block him. Like, tough defenses they've been playing. But Jamar Chase is still someone to put in your lineup. If you really had to decide between Jamar Chase and Quentin Johnston, oh my goodness. I think I would go Jamar Chase, but that's only because of his name. It's 100% only because of his name, and it is close. It is close. Wow, I don't want to talk about that. Anything else in this game? No tight ends for the Bengals. Yeah, let's move on. Commanders, Washington Commanders on the road against the LA Chargers. Let's see here. Commanders are 2-2. Chargers are 3-1. 47.5 point over under. The Chargers are 2.5 point home favorites. They just lost to the Giants last week. So they're looking to bounce back. Omarion Hampton with the Najee Harris injury looked great as the lead back there. He's a running back one the rest of the way pretty much. He was 12 for 128 and 1, 5 for 37 through the air on 5 targets. He's been great the last couple of weeks. I know the first weeks were kind of disappointing, but he's been a monster. You put him in the lineup no matter what. You I don't know what to expect out of this game. It's a good over under of 47.5. Jaden Daniels is back for the Commanders, so hopefully we see some offense flying. But both of these quarterbacks are in play. Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels are in that mid to upper quarterback one conversation. Omarion Hampton, like I said, I'm not really wanting to start any running backs for the Commanders. If I had to pick one, it'd be Bill Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. But his carries have been 10, 4, 8, and 7, and he hasn't seen more than 2 targets in a game. So once Austin Eckler, also on my dynasty team, by the way, that I showed you, was out for the season, I thought he'd have an opportunity here, but it's looking like not so much. Chris Rodriguez is also kind of the next in line there. He's had 11 and 7 carries the last couple of weeks. But until we see one of these guys like take over the backfield, I'm not really looking to start any of them. They could really use Brian Robinson right now. I'm not going to lie, the guy they traded away. And then McNichols, he's clearly third in the pecking order right now. Seeing very few carries, very little passing game involvement. He actually had his first target of the season last week. So 2 for 3 on the ground and 1 for 0 through the air on 2 targets. So I'd avoid that running back room. And the Chargers are also giving up the fewest points to running backs. So I'd be targeting this Commanders offense, to the passing game. So Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel is going to be a good play this week. No Terry McLaurin for the Commanders, so that is huge. Noah Brown is also out for the Commanders, so Deebo's a good play. Deebo is he's really surprised me. Like, he's in the high wide receiver 2 category this week, I would say. And then for the Chargers, like I said, Hampton and Herbert are good starts. The Chargers are going to be without their stud left tackle, Joe Alt, but I think, you still start these guys. At wide receiver, Quentin Johnston is a must start at this point. Like, he's in that wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 range. Keenan Allen he had a not great week last week, but every receiver has down games, and he's still a wide receiver 2 at this point. And then, honestly, third in that order is probably Ladd McConkey. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these days, Ladd surpasses one of these guys in production, but it just hasn't happened yet. And I would just keep riding the wave with Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. If you have Ladd McConkey, it's been really rough. You can start him as a, wide receiver, high wide receiver 3, low wide receiver 2. I'd start Marv over him. I'd stick with Brian Thomas, Keenan Allen, his teammate, Jameson Williams. I'd probably play like between him and like Olave. That's close. I'd probably play Ladd over like Godwin, Devontae Smith, Diggs, Addison, but I'd play him over T. Higgins. But yeah, it's getting gross. And then what else here? Zach Ertz is always just a streaming option at tight end. Like, you can put him out there. And the Jaden Daniels is back. So that is nice that we will get that stud fantasy quarterback in the lineup. The Marcus Mariota time for a couple games there is over. And yeah, I think we're ready to move on to the Patriots traveling to Buffalo to play the Bills. 49.5 point over under. That's pretty high. The Bills are 8.5 point home favorites. So I guess we'll start with the Bills. Josh Allen, must start quarterback. James Cook, must start running back. He's been a stud this year. And then after that, I don't think anyone else is a must start for the Bills. It's always hard to know where the passing production is going to go. Plus, Josh Allen runs a lot himself, so his receivers don't always eat, even when the offense does. Keon Coleman, wide receiver 3. You hope he makes a big play, but outside of week 1, it's been bad. It's been really bad. Hasn't seen more than 4 targets since week 1. Where he saw 11. You're kind of hoping for a big play there. And then Khalil Shakir is probably a safer bet for production with not as much upside, but the last couple of weeks he was 4 for 45 and a touchdown. Then last week 5 for 69 and a touchdown. Very nice. So I guess I lead Shakir, but I'm not looking to start either one as more than a wide receiver 3. Dalton Kincaid is probably the pass catcher I'm most interested in, just because of position scarcity of tight ends. He's been good. He's been finding a way to be good for fantasy. Even last week, he only saw 2 targets, but he caught 1 for 28 and a touchdown. Like, I'm not chasing the production per se, but he keeps finding a way to produce. And at the tight end position, it's kind of like Darren Waller, where it's like he may not produce, but he has a chance to this week. I think Kincaid is like that, but on a higher scale. He could very well catch 1 pass and it could be a touchdown. So, he probably play him over Goddard. Him and Ertz is a tough conversation. It's kind of the range he's in. On the Patriots side, Drake May is a very good start here. How's the Bills defense looking against some of these positions here? Bills are kind of middle of the pack against quarterback. Don't care. Drake May runs, and he's been really consistent and solid. Bills are kind of middle of the pack against running backs as well. Yeah, what do you do with Ramondre and Travion Henderson? So, I don't think either is a must start by any means. Ramondre is in that, I don't want to start him or Travion Henderson. They are startable. They could score. That's kind of all you're hoping for, but neither is very exciting to me. I don't think Ramondre Stevenson is going away. I think he will be the primary back, and Travion Henderson might get more involved later in the season, but it just hasn't happened yet. He ran in a touchdown last week that saved his day, but it really wasn't great for fantasy. Like 7 for 32 and a touchdown, 2 for 14 through the air on 2 targets. So, you could play one of these guys and hope they get a touchdown, but I'd start Pollard over them. Woody Marks, Rachaad White, Dobbins, Montgomery, even Jordan Mason against the Browns. I'd probably start either of those guys over like Nick Chubb, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or any of the Commanders guys. But like Michael Carter, Rico Dowdle, even maybe Demercado, like you can make a case that all those guys you could start over the Patriots guys. So, receivers, Stephon Diggs, he finally had like a really good game last week against the Panthers. He's a wide receiver 3. Week 1 it was pretty good for PPR. Like he saw 7 targets, turned into 6 for 57. Then the next 2 weeks he saw 5 and 3 targets. You're like, oh no, what's going on? And then last week against the Panthers he was 6 for 101 on 7 targets. So he played, these are his snap percentages according to Fantasy Pros. 56, 52, 53, and then 63. So, he's not playing like a full-time role. He is older. He's coming off that ACL injury. He might PPR his way to solid production. He's kind of like a Chris Olave light right now. But I'd probably play Diggs over Shakir and Coleman. Is that fair to say? I guess Coleman might have a little more upside, but you got to get more passes to kind of pay off on that upside, right? And then Hunter Henry at tight end. He's kind of the main pass catcher you want right now for the Patriots. It's kind of like Dalton Kincaid, where I'm not telling you like, oh, look at the big number. He's going to do another big number, but he's a threat in the red zone. He only saw 2 targets last week, which is unfortunate coming off of 11 targets where he had 8 for 90 and 2 touchdowns, but he caught both of them for 39 yards and a touchdown. So tight end is gross like that, and he's one of those gross guys where you can put him in your lineup pretty much every week and he might catch a touchdown. I'm not really doing the Keyshawn Booty thing at this point. And yeah, let's get out of that game. Let's move on to the... Is that a night game? Let's see. What's the night game? Wait, what is this thing telling me right now? Patriots at Bill. Okay, we're good. So we're going to move on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, so this is the Monday night game. Okay, gotcha. Kansas City Chiefs on the road against the Jacksonville Jags. Did I say the records, by the way? Patriots are 2-2, Bills are 4-0. Chiefs are 2-2, Jags are 3-1. Monday Night Football. Why did my betting lines literally just went away right the second I was looking at it? Where'd it go? Okay, so 45.5 point over under here. The Chiefs are 3.5 point road favorites. Mahomes has actually been like really good for fantasy. I know that might sound weird to like a casual fan where it's like obviously Mahomes is good for fantasy, but he had a stretch there where he really wasn't for like over a year. And this year he's actually been like really good. He's had a couple games where he ran the ball early in the season. He just had 4 touchdowns against the Ravens. So he's doing enough. He's doing enough, and Xavier Worthy is having him back is huge. So, you know, he's in that quarterback one conversation, like as he should be. Like the NFL and fantasy is better when Mahomes is like doing stuff. Trevor Lawrence on the other side, not looking to start him. Moving on to the running backs, Travis Etienne for Jacksonville. At this point, he's a must start. He's in that like running back 2 range where I guess technically if you have a stacked roster, maybe you don't have to start him, but I would be starting him in pretty much any scenario. And the Chiefs are actually giving up the 10th most points to running backs on the season, which is surprising for them because their run defense has been good in recent memory. I'm not looking to start any of the Chiefs running backs, Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. Again, like I know it's gross for fantasy, so maybe you are forced to, but I don't want to as anything more than like a very desperate like running back 3. That's what they are at this point. And Jacksonville's defense is looking pretty solid. So at wide receiver, Xavier Worthy is a good play. Wide receiver for the Chiefs. He missed some time after a week 1 injury. Got hurt like right away. He came back last week against the Ravens, saw 8 targets, turned into 5 for 83. Also had 2 carries for 38 yards. I'm totally cool putting him right back in the lineup as like a high wide receiver 2 with upside. Like he's a guy that can make a big play. So I always value that upside. And then other than that, I guess receiver-wise, I don't want to start Juju, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton. One of those guys might make a play, but I don't want to guess who. For Jacksonville, Brian Thomas Jr. is still startable. And I know it's been rough. He's more of a wide receiver 2 at this point, but I'm not benching him unless I have a really good option. It's so weird because the targets have been there, you know? 7, 12, 6, 7. It's just... You know, in my main league, non-PPR, Brian Thomas Jr. fell to me in the draft. And in all my mock drafts, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get probably Jonathan Taylor here. But Brian Thomas Jr. fell to me instead of going like, you know, earlier in the second. And I was like, oh, I have to take Brian Thomas Jr. And, you know, if I had just stuck with Jonathan Taylor, I'd probably be undefeated right now. But it's been rough. I'm still starting him. He's in the wide receiver 2 range. You know, Chiefs are giving up the 26th most points to receivers. So that'd be the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 7th fewest, right? 7th fewest points to receivers. I think you still start him unless you have someone that you picked up that, you know, I'd play Quentin Johnson over him. We'll use our Quentin Johnson barometer. Travis Hunter though, not messing with that. He's borderline droppable at this point. He's just not being used enough on offense and in a way that is good for fantasy. So, and then at tight end, Brenton Strange is a streaming option at tight end for the Jags. And then Travis Kelce, obviously not prime Kelce anymore, but someone that you could still put in there and Hope he gets a touchdown, but he's playable. He's playable. He is. He really is. It sucks. He's not what he once was, but that's what happens. Sad, sad, sad. And yeah, those are all the games. So thank you all for enjoying or watching. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you enjoyed the podcast. And yeah, good luck to everyone except your opponents in week 5. Thank you for listening so much. As always, monitor the news to make sure that, you know, as news breaks after I post these videos, things I say in this video might not be true anymore, like injuries and lineup decisions and all that stuff. So thanks again. I will see you in the next one. Make sure to follow or subscribe to become a fantasy football prodigy. Peace.